Okay, so now we're going to remove the barrels, and this is an 850 Commando engine. So because of that, it has 4 Allen bolts that go down through the cylinders. There's 4 Allen bolts here, which aren't there on the 750 models. And for those of you who've read the manual that I've written, you'll know that back in the day, my friend Alan had a 750 Commando combat engine, a Commando with a combat engine in, and it was nothing but trouble basically, and it culminated in the barrels fracturing and lifting off the crankcases, because the combat is apart from having major trouble with the big ends, main bearings, the combat is also a very high compression engine, and it literally blew the barrels off the crankcases. So the barrels fractured around the bottom and lifted off the crankcases. So that's one reason for having these 4 Allen bolts, which help to prevent that happening. So the head literally doesn't blow itself off the crankcases. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nuts on studs around the bottom, and then we've got the 4 Allen bolts in the top there. So I'm just going to loosen. I've got the wrong spanner. Right. So again, I've got problems of getting the ring spanner over the nuts, because I bought that quarter width I got that does go over the nuts for the cylinder head. That was a one-off, and now I want a 3/16 to go over these 3/16 width to go over these nuts, and I've only got them in my normal standard packs, and again the ring's too thick. It'll go over that one, but on this side, same nut, it's too close to the barrel casting to go over. So I'm going to start with this one. That's tight. I use the soft end of the hammer simply in case I slip and happen to catch the casing. Just loosen it, half loosen it. Have a go with the one on this side, but I'm having to use the spanner as an open-ended, so I hope it doesn't slip. Are you going? Go on, go. Oh, I don't think that's going. Damn. Good. I've got an 11. I know they are pretty much the same. I've got an 11mm spanner, ring spanner, that it is thin enough on the ring to go over the nut, between the nut and the actual cylinders themselves. So there, I've got the ring spanner on. I'm going to use this end now because I'm far enough away from the engine not to damage anything. There we go, and it's gone. So that's 11mm on that. It's simply because I haven't got a Whitworth ring spanner that's thin enough to go on that nut. Then let's have a look. Now these two at the back, these are a pain because the stud is so close to the bottom of the bottom fin that I can't get the ring spanner through. So I'm going to have to again use open-ended, which I'm not wildly happy about. But I'll see if it will go, because I can't get any ring spanner over because I just can't get it through the gap. you going? Yeah, you are. Let me just. Or have you just gone round? I think it might have just gone round. I'm putting the 11mm on because that's actually a tighter fit than the Whitworth spanner. Right, this particular, I've got one nut that I cannot undo. I've got a special thin tri-core spanner which is especially thin so that you can get it over, over the top of the stud, but even with that it's not thin enough to get over, so I cannot get a ring spanner on it. I can't get a socket on it because obviously it's underneath all the fins, so I'm going to have to use open-ended. I don't know of any other way of doing it. The open-ended, and I'm using 11mm, which is actually the tightest fit I can get on the nut, but it's still not right. So I'm going to try heating. Again, I'm going to put the blowtorch on it, see if that'll help us. The problem is this time that we've got steel on steel, so they're both going to expand at the same time. The nut and the stud are going to expand at the same time. So it's not necessarily going to help us, but I'll give it a go because I'm trying to think. I don't know what else I can do with that nut. Apart from putting an open-ended spanner on it, and the spanner is, and if I'm not careful, I'm going to round that nut before I know it, and then we are going to be in trouble. Anyway, so I'll try the heat, see if that helps us at all. Okay, I've moved the strap out of the way a bit, so I don't burn the strap. I'm going to see if I can I'm going to put some heat on this nut at the back here, and let's hope that has a desired effect. If it doesn't, I'm really going to have to think again. Damn. Oh, we've got it. Whew. Wow, I was really worried about that. But I didn't know how else I was going to get that nut off, because can't get a ring spanner over it. Can't get a nut breaker. You can break the nut, but again, you need to put that over the top. And of course, that was our problem. There was no room to get it over the top, in between the nut and the bottom fin of the barrels. Phew. Anyway, it's undone now. Thank heaven for that. Whew. Right, now we've got the 4. I really didn't. I don't know what I'd have done if I couldn't get that off with that open spanner. I really don't know how to get that nut off otherwise. But anyway, that was it. I put heat on and more heat and more heat and more heat, and eventually, I mean a lot of heat, must have been 2-3 minutes with a blowtorch just on it, and eventually it's gone. Right, so we've got these Allen screws going down through the barrels now. Woo-hoo. Should be using the soft end of the mallet, but they're so tight. I'm not. Right, they're tight. What torque they're done up to. Check it. They're damn tight those. Whew. Getting these barrels off has been more an issue than I thought. Oh damn. I don't know if I mentioned, I've done this central nut at the front. There's one central one, and for some reason I've got a 9/16 spanner on it. Again, I couldn't get a Whitworth to fit, so you always need to be ready for that. I've got an 11mm spanner on some of these, 3/16 nuts, and then I've got a 9/16 on what should be a 5/16 width, I think. So you just have to play it as it comes. It should be a 3/16 or whatever, but if it isn't, then well, okay, just use a different spanner. Put these Allen studs out. Obviously on a 750 you don't have these. I'm not sure whether you have any additional cylinder base nuts, but I don't think you do. It's just that these 4 simply aren't there. Right, I've got all the 4 Allen studs out. I've got the 3 nuts off the front completely removed off the studs, and then I've got these 2 studs at the back which I can't get off because as they're long nuts like these, and they're hitting the bottom fin on the barrels. So I've now got to take the barrels off, which is going to be harder than the head because they haven't got the valve springs and that pushing them off, and unlike the head there are studs sticking through the barrel which is stopping you moving it, twisting it sideways or anything like that. So I'm going to try a bit of an old trick. Always be a bit careful about it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to double check I have removed all the studs as before. Yes, I've got 3, the front 3 on the bench. I've got the 4 Allen screws, and then I've just got these 2 at the back. What I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on unscrewing these nuts, and as I unscrew the nuts, they're already tight against the bottom fin of the barrel. Unscrewing will push the barrel up off the head, so I'm actually using the nuts. As I unscrew them, they should just lift the barrel. You want to be careful doing this because, of course, what you don't want to do is break the fin, because you are effectively, unscrewing up onto that bottom fin. You're using that bottom fin to force the barrels off. But I think if you do it carefully, in theory, it should work. I've done it before. Yep, it's working. It's working. Yep, I don't know if you can see, but the barrel seal is definitely broken at the back here. I'm about an 1/8 of an inch. About an 1/8 of an inch up here at the back. So that's good. So now what I'm going to do very carefully, because the barrels are now off at the back, but they're still on at the front, and there are 3 studs. So I'm going to tap almost sideways. I'm going to pull up on the barrel and just tap the fin sideways. I'm not going to hit upwards because obviously you risk, but if I spread the load a bit, famous last words, still don't want to come. There it's going. So I was hitting kind of, I wasn't hitting just one fin, I was hitting the whole barrel, all the fins, and more sideways and upwards. And obviously, you know, I can just about get away with that, but you have to be very careful. Now I've got my little bits of wood somewhere, my chocks. I know they're at the back of the garage, so I don't have any bolts to get them out. Ow. Ow. I'll probably have to, you see, lazy people take the most trouble. I can't be bothered to go and get my little bit of wood, my wood chocks from the back of the garage. And because of that, you know, I just crush my fingers. But I can't put metal there because it will damage the faces. The last thing I've got is my which, oh yeah, just small enough, the shaft of my hammer, because I am lazy. And I'll go back on to undoing these. Okay. Yeah, the nuts are off. They are off completely now. So we should be able to just lift the barrel straight off now. Be a bit careful of the pistons. Because the pistons in this case are obviously semi. There we go, whoops. Pistons are obviously semi-seized. Okay. Right, I don't know if we're going to be reusing these pistons. Everything looks pretty good. Yeah. What I can tell you is the engine has, of course, I hadn't thought of this, that I can see that the engine has wet sumped before it was taken apart. So all the oil from the oil tank is now in the crankcases, which is kind of good in our, from our point of view, because it's kept everything's really nice and oily and, you know, as you want it to be. But it does mean I've got a crankcase full of oil that I'm going to have to drain off somehow before we, you know, before we take the engine apart completely. Let's have a look. Yeah, the barrel's pretty knackered at the top there. No scoring. Piston rings are all intact. The piston rings seized. Oh no. Looks like the piston rings are like that. Second ring on both pistons seems to be a bit seized. Let's have a look. Yeah, second ring on that piston is seized. Where's the damn gap? Can't find the ring gap on this side. Where is it gone? It'll be somewhere dead awkward. Oh, it's there. Let's see. The piston rings close right up, and it's and again it's seized. So both the second ring on both pistons is seized in the groove. All the other rings are fine, but yeah, strange. The second ring on both pistons is seized. Right, yeah, barrels are off. Obviously, as we saw before, the top of the cylinders is rusted. The rest of the barrels don't look too bad, but basically I'll be taking it down to the engineers. I'll take the pistons down to the engineers. They'll measure the gap between the pistons and the barrel. There's no obvious scoring, so there's no damage, but what happens is over time the cylinder slowly wears wider and wider, and so there's too big a gap between the piston and the cylinder. So even though it's you know, but there's on these there's a ridge where the pistons used to be, I can feel, and obviously it's rusted at the top. But it depends what the gap is, because if we hone them, then I think you need a 5 thou gap, something like that, between the pistons and the cylinder wall. And any more than that, we have to go for a rebore. So we'll be taking them down and measuring that gap, and to see whether we can get away with honing and just have new rings, or whether we need to have a rebore and new pistons. Anyway, there we go. We'll stop there for now. Again, I'm not going to take things apart. Oh, we've got the tappet blocks. Yeah, they're staying in. Tappets, they look okay. There's no undue wear there on the tappets, or on the crankshaft, on the camshaft. Just an initial inspection, having a quick look. There's nothing major, so you know, it seems to be in okay condition. Nothing broken on the cylinder barrels, apart from this damn fin. Anyway, there we're getting there. So the next thing I'll do is I'll take the pistons off, which I'll do in a while, and then leave that there, and then we'll probably go on. I think it's the primary. It's primary next, I think, but we'll take it one step at a time.